So we're in a time when a lot of people are having very frightening dreams. And they range from everything from a sort of a personal level where they're being pursued or somebody's trying to kill them, or they're in a situation that's so dangerous they're not sure they're going to get out of it. And sometimes larger scale scenes in dreams where everybody's going to die, or there's a terrible situation where it's unclear how anybody can get out of it, and so forth. Okay. And many times these dreams are so powerfully emotional that the person wakes up in a cold sweat, thankful that they were dreaming and that they're back in the world, as it were. So, what I want to do today is try to give you some perspective on what's going on and how what is happening in the world, in our waking life, is influencing our dreams, but in a way that may not be clear. So, let's start with an idea here. The idea is that we begin with consciousness. That is the I, you know, when we look at the world and we think about ourselves and we say I, that is where it's coming from. It's coming from consciousness. And I'll give you another sort of example here. When people get to the age of about 50 or so, they start saying, well, gee, I don't really feel like I'm 50, even though, I know my body's slowing down and all that kind of stuff. I don't feel like I'm 50. Well, that's a big hint, because the I that doesn't feel like you're 50 is essentially your consciousness, or what we could call the essence of who you are, or we could call your soul. And to take that idea a further step, the Irish philosophers tell us that uh, the soul is not in the body is in the soul. So just let's take that idea for a second, that the body is in the soul, that there is something much larger than our physical experience in the world when we're awake. Okay, so the idea is there's consciousness. And then there's the waking state. And in the middle of that, there's the dream world. So the question is, which way does the information flow? In other words, when you're frightened during the day, is that why you have a frightening dream? Well, there are some schools of thought that say that's exactly what happens. What I'm going to suggest to you is that what's happening is your consciousness is taking your waking experience of fear and putting it into your dreams for the purposes of having you look at it and ask yourself the implicit question, is this how I want to organize my experience? So here we sit in a global pandemic, in many ways, sitting here in the United States at the point in time when I'm making this video, we're pretty much at the beginning stages of this. So there's the concern about whether or not you're going to get sick or the people you love are going to get sick, and what's going to happen and how do you deal with that and where do you get food and all these sort of aspects of life at this point. And then there's another kind of less aware fears that are in the margins that are probably going to come into sharper relief, like, well, what is really going to happen to the structure of society and the economics, and how is it that we're creating $2 trillion worth of money, and all these things that you don't really have time to think about at this point, but which will come into your awareness at some point. Okay, so what your soul is doing when your soul gives you a nightmare is showing you your belief system, is showing you how you're organizing your experience. Now you can say to me, hey, Will, wait a minute, this is terrifying. Don't tell me I'm making this up. Of course you're not making it up. But on the other hand, as you're sitting in your house right now watching this, there are a certain number of things you could do, most of which you've already done. And there's nothing you can do about some other events that are happening around you. And the question is, okay, so now what do you do? And the nightmares are trying to show you that devoting your energy to be frightened all the time is something that you ought to reconsider. A nightmare is what we might call a reflecting dream, right? It is literally holding up a mirror to you and showing you something. And the idea is that the flow of the information is coming from the essence of who you are, your consciousness, your soul, trying to educate you about the next larger version of who you are going to be. particularly in a crisis like this. So I hesitate to say that nightmares are your lucky day. I've said that in the past, and the nightmares have gotten a lot worse for some people. And I don't mean to minimize that fear. It's very upsetting. And the fear of the nightmare is actually even more frightening sometimes than the fear of what's going on around us. But the fear is a sharpness. It's a sharp emotion, and it is designed to grab your attention. It is not designed to reinforce to you that all these fears that are going on inside you all the time are the right thing, and you should be afraid because look at this nightmare and it's going to be even worse than you think. That's not the point of dreaming. The point of dreaming is your imagination showing you that there is a way of organizing your experience that is different from what you're doing. A lot of the dreams that people are bringing to me, and it's interesting, particularly men are bringing to me, are these sort of catastrophic situations. And then there's this very interesting part at the end, and this has happened a half a dozen times in the recent weeks. The little part of the end is, yeah, but that doesn't really seem to matter that much, you know? I'm actually okay. Sort of this little footnote at the end of this very dramatic dream. And that's the way the dreamer will tell us to have some perspective on the situation. The great difficulty of what we are going through is prolonged uncertainty. Now, in the United States, we had 9/11, and it was an event, and it was terrifying. And the repercussions immediately went on for about a week to 10 days until we got a sense, okay, the number of attacks that came or the number of attacks they're going to be. And then we went around reorganizing our society around that. But it was a relatively short period of time of uncertainty. What we're in right now is a very prolonged period of time. So there are things in my experience, when I was in the corporate world around risk management and the monetary system, that I can look at and get a sense of, well, okay, I don't quite see how this is going to work the way it's been working. That's one thing. It's entirely something else for people to give you predictions about what is going to happen. Because frankly, nobody knows. And we're not going to know. We're not going to know for weeks and if not months. And what is going to emerge out of this will take months and years. That's a very difficult thing to live with, particularly since we've organized our society around this idea that we can figure things out, that what we think is what's conscious. Everything else is something else, a lesser form of consciousness. It's not true. I don't believe it's true. And my experience tells me it's not true. And dreams tell me it's not true. But we walk around during the day with that belief that we have this figured out. We can understand what's coming. We can deal with problems and so forth. This we can't deal with. This is overwhelming. And so that makes human existence very difficult, particularly in a society that has such a left brain love affair. And that is being challenged. And it's upsetting and it's disorienting. And my only advice is that, first of all, you recognize that we're not going to know, that people can have all kinds of plans and make proclamations about what's going to happen when. Nobody really knows. And if you can wrap your head around that idea that you are operating in a society where things are moving around in a way that make life very unpredictable, that will give you some kind of basis to sort of understand what's happening in these dreams for you. Now, it's difficult to do it by yourself. A nightmare is something, number one, best written down, and number two, best told to someone else. Why? Because in the telling of it, you get to have some perspective on it. And in the telling of it, you got to make sure who you're talking to is not going to buy into the drama of the nightmare, okay? He's not going to interpret something for you. but is just going to listen and be an audience and ask you some questions. That's basically what I do for a living. I don't interpret anybody's dream. You know, I'm an audience for the essence of who they are. I'm an audience for their consciousness that is coming into awareness. And let me just end this with an idea here, because there's a lot of discussion online these days about expanding our consciousness. Your consciousness is so vast. My suggestion to you is you can't even conceive of expanding it, because you can't even conceive of what it is. I can't either. Okay. It's not that we're becoming more conscious. It's that we're becoming more aware of the consciousness of who we are. That consciousness exists. It exists in everybody, even though you may look at some folks and think, there's no way that's a conscious human being. Yes, that is a conscious human being who is completely in denial, okay? Who does not want to be aware of the essence of what it means to be human. Your nightmares, the dreams that are reflecting back to you how you are organizing your experience, are a human experience. It is an experience designed to help you become more aware of who you really are. And at the same time, you got to figure out strategies to get through life right now. So I'm hopeful that this kind of perspective is useful for you. And it's not that I am in any way trying to diminish the emotion and the impact of a nightmare or a very upsetting dream. I'm not. As a matter of fact, they have a very clear purpose. They're really designed to show you that you don't need to be as afraid as you experience yourself right now. That's not to say there's not things to be afraid of. That's not to say that there aren't precautions you need to take. But the dream is not designed to reinforce that perception. The dream is designed, the nightmare is designed to show you that you have sovereignty and you have power and you have awareness. And the essence of who you are is not going anywhere. So I hope that was helpful. I should also mention that I put a post online in a number of different places that, you know, if you're having a very upsetting dream and you just want to talk about it, I'm available to do that. No charge, no obligation. You send me an email, we'll set up a time. We'll just talk through it so you get a sense of what I'm trying to say to you in this video. Okay? So take care of yourselves. Take the precautions that makes, you know, everybody has told us makes sense. We will get through this. It is not going to be 1 or 2 months. It is going to be a major realignment of a lot of things in our culture. And it'll be, in some ways, once we get through this part, pretty interesting. So take care of yourselves. And I will